this is the first, it might seem a silly little problem, but I spent bloody hours thinking about this. And I'm not sure I did the right thing in the end, and I'd like to throw this open to you now. They were all together with the climb. We had the 18 climbing team, we had a 4-man BBC television team, and we had one particularly cantankerous, awkward Sunday Times correspondent. So we had 25 people. Now, I don't like large groups. I like small expeditions. But I'd reckon this was the only way we were going to climb the southwest face of Everest. But the thought of 25 people who could barely fit into the big base tent, all travelling together, I thought, oh, blimey, I don't want that. And so I thought, well, it'd be much better to split them, you know. So what do we do? If we split them, so you have, say, 12 in each group, it's a smaller number, it's a more harmonious number, and interestingly, it's the perceived wisdom of, say, trekking, you know, commercial treks. The ideal size of a commercial trek is about 12 people, not more. Once you get more, it gets too big. So have those 2 groups of 12. But then, how do you split them? And don't we want them all together because we're a nice jolly team? Because especially, I knew most of my team quite well, but some of them not that well. We'd all been doing all our own thing back in Europe, and some of them lived, in fact, in Europe rather than in England and so on. And we only got together occasionally. So there are all these things to consider in making up your mind, whether you split the team or bring them together, which is actually quite fundamental. What would you do? Would you be worried about it? Any ideas? What would you do? And what would your thinking be?
The reason I say that is that I work for a charity, and we did a trek at Kennebali last year, and we had 16 of us, and we had the option exactly this to sort of split down into small groups, and I felt that it was quite important that we all stayed together, and it was a group achievement, if you like, when we got to the top. And I found that I was able, because like you, I had people that I knew quite well, but I had people that I'd never really met before apart from on paper. And I found it gave me the chance to move around and get to know people that I didn't know, but I was still accessible to people that I did know well. And I also found that people formed their own little groups as you went, and then people are sort of leapfrogs. So you might walk in the morning with 2 or 3 people here, and then after lunch you'd end up walking with another. And so you got to know people better. And I felt that if we split, then there'd be a sort of us and them.
But would you split, or would you keep them all together?
I would split into two groups, but also split the idea so I'd have half of the climbers in one team and half the climbers in the other. So
you do the split, so because it is actually, I mean, in a way, 16's kind of marginal, but the difference between 16 and 25 is quite big. So, but you'd split them, and you'd split them so there'd be a mixture of climbers, so multitasks in each group.
Correct.
And yeah. And what would your thinking of that be?
Possibly that the climbers could form some sort of allegiances with each other, depending whether they knew each other well. Secondly, God forbid something happened, you can still continue on because you've got an element of climbers and administrators together. So if something went wrong with part of the team, you could carry on.
Well, anyway, let's just see what. So there we've got the split, and we've got them keep together. So let's do a rough show of hands, see how the opinions go. Who would keep the group together right the way through? And who would split? I would say, I would say the keeping together actually the largest number. Well, I decided on the split. But suddenly, the moment, though, you decide on the split, there comes another rather difficult question, because you've then got to decide how you're going to do it. And I did exactly what you said. I split it between the, so I had a rough equal proportion of climbers and managers on each group. But then, if either you can just draw it out of a hat, or you can actually think, well, who would be useful to have with me in my group? And that immediately is a choice thing. And who, as a manager, do you tend to choose? Or maybe this is a terrible kind of thing on my kind of thing as a manager. I chose the people I found it easy to be with. And I chose the people who I felt were going to be actually useful, so we could have some serious discussions. So there we are. So I had this little group who were going to be the serious discussion group, and we had the other group, which was going to be all the awkward people, ask you difficult questions and everything like that, as the second group. I then actually, I compounded this. I can't believe that I did it. Because of course you've got to have names for the two groups. What do I name them? The A team and the B team. I still blush